Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to discuss another important concept in Entity Framework Core, and that is called as Auditable Entity using an AF core. Now, first thing first, what do you mean by an auditable entity? I'm pretty much sure that while working with a database, you might have come across to a situation where you have to create a four columns in pretty much all of your table, and the column names are CreatedOn, CreatedBy, EditedOn, EditedBy, right? Something which is mentioned over here, all these four columns. These four columns are called as auditable column because normally as a part of my development activity, we keep on track the changes based on these columns. So let's say if a user is creating a new record, we populate number one and number two columns. Whereas if a user is editing a record, we update third and fourth column, right? So that's what we have done in the past as well. Now the question is how we can do this with an entity framework core. A quick answer, you have to go to all of your tables and then you need to include these four columns inside it, and then you have to modify all of your insert and update script. Well, that seems to be a lot of work. And if you have not done a planning ahead, or if you have not planned these columns while creating a table, then you are in trouble. Now, today we discussed that we can even include these columns after a couple of months of deleting my database, and that too doesn't require any major code changes. So let's get started. I'll be navigating back to the same project, the one that we have been using so far. And as you can see in my current department table, I have already included these four columns. Now these four columns is a part of my auditable entity, and this is my first way where I have to open up each of my class and I have to include these four columns in all of my table in order to make it work. But I'm not going to do that bit. Instead, I'm going to create a new class and I'll give this class name as audit entities, or you can give it whatever you want. It's not a concern. There's no such naming convention. Maybe I will simply give the name as audit entity, and then I will cut all these four properties and will put it inside this. Okay. Now this is my audit entity class and it include the details of all four columns which I want to create into my database. The next step, we have to inherit my table or inherit my class with this audit entity. Now, once you have done the inheritance, it means that by the concept of OOPS, your department class include these columns as well as these columns as well, right? So that is a simple OOPS practice that we had worked in the past. And now I am leveraging those practices only in order to create a new columns inside my database. I will move this class into a separate location. So let's move inside a separate class file. And then I can also include this same entities in all my classes. So again, audit entity in my courses table, audit entity in my product table, and audit entity in my all other tables, right? So now you can get a gist of it that I can simply include this in pretty much all my table. And the next step is we have to run the migration because that is the next step to update the changes in my database. And I'll write the command. First, let me check whether I'm in the correct folder. Yes, I am. And the command is make add migration. Remember, we are using still make file in this, and the name is edit audit entity, and press enter. Now, once you press enter, it eventually run the same migration command, which is .NET EF add audit entity, and you can see my build is getting started. It will take a couple of seconds, and once that is done, it will simply make the changes. Now I'm getting some error. So we need to fix what error I'm getting over here. And it simply says your build got failed. So let's go back to Visual Studio and see where exactly we are getting this error. So let me first build this entire project. I'm building it now. It will take for a while. So let's wait for it. Okay, so it says I have a public modifier, right? And there's a typo in my code. So I need to remove this typo. I have to again jump back to my terminal and I have to run this command again. Okay. Let me again write it down, make add migration name, added audit entity. Once done, it started my build again, and now I'm hoping that there should be a proper migration file should be created based on the changes which I had done. Now, it seems the build got succeeded. Let's quickly jump back to Visual Studio to check the changes. So I'll navigate back to my Visual Studio and you can see a new migration file got created. And this migration file is technically doing the changes which I want. So it is dropping all the foreign keys, and there were some changes in my code base which is doing this. But apart from it, you can see it is adding columns, which is created by, created date, modified by, and modified date in pretty much all the tables, the one that I have put it down over there. So now you can see in department tables, in courses tables, and if I add another table as well, that will work. So this feature will add the columns in all the four tables and all the tables which I have just created. Let's quickly update these changes against my database. Well, again, go to my database terminal and will write down make update database. And it will run the command .NET EF database update, this one. And once this command is executed, then it should update my database and it should create all those four columns against my DB. It seems it is working fine. Let's quickly navigate back to database and see whether we have the relevant column inside my departments and my courses tables. So once I run this, now it sees that both the tables include the column which is named as modified by, right? So department table also has a column name as modified by, and my courses table, which is the bottom one, also include these four columns. Now we can also see that these consist of some dummy values which we need to fix and we'll do it later stage. But whatever we want to do, that is completed. That my tables include all these four columns, and what exactly I have to do is I have to simply go to each of my entity classes and inherit those class with an audit entity. Pretty much simple, right? Because now you don't have to modify each and every table, and you don't have to even modify each and every entities while inserting these records. So we have done the half work. But the second question is how we are going to populate a record in these tables. Again, if you have already implemented some of the methods, like in my case, if I go to my department controller, I have already implemented a way to insert a new record into my department table, that is with this method. Then am I supposed to modify this again? Am I supposed to insert the value of all the four columns one by one at each and every post call or at each every method? The short answer is no. So there's a shortcut of doing this bit, and I'll show you how this can be done. You have to navigate back to your DB context class, and inside DB context class, you need to create a private method. We can give this method name as apply audit info. So we'll use private void apply audit info, and this method consists of certain code. So we will be leveraging the functionality of entity framework change tracker in this, and we will be only modifying those entities which are tracked by change tracker. So the code will be where entries is equals to change tracker dot entries dot where, and we'll write it down, x tends to x dot entity is. Now over here you need to give the class name which you have created, and in my case the class name is audit entity. I'll copy this class name and paste it over here, and will also say to my EF core that e dot state, which is I can say x dot state, is equals to entity state dot added, or e dot state is equals to entity state dot modified. Now, what does that mean? It simply says that I will be only tracking those changes whose entity state is either added or modified, because it is quite obvious that you will be only populating all those four columns if you are adding a new record or if you are modifying something into your database, right? You will be not doing this for any other purpose. So that's why from the entity framework change tracker, we only track those entities whose state is either modified or it is either added. Now we have to run a for loop on these entries like this way. And once inside the for loop, we are inside the for loop, then we'll grab the entity and we'll write it down. Audit entity, entry, entry dot entity. Okay. Now, once that is done, we'll again apply a check and we'll say if entity, if entry dot state is equals to entity state dot added. So if it is added, then I'm going to insert or I'm going to update two columns which is created by, and over here you can use any of the string value. You can pass your current logged in username, you can retrieve it from HTTP context, but for this demo purpose I'm only going to add system and entity dot created on or created date is datetime dot now or maybe UTC now. And similarly, I'll again use another if block, and this if block will run when my entity is modified. Okay. And again, in this time, I'm not going to update created by column. I'm going to update a modified by column, and I'm going to update a modified date as well. And with these changes, you are done. You have to simply remove this, you have to close this method, and now your code is ready. But where I have to call this code? So you need to also override another method inside it, and the method name is on save changes. Override save changes, and inside save changes you will write this apply audit info. Okay. So we will call this method on a save changes, which means that whenever a person is calling a save changes from a DB context, first of all, it will run this method and then it will run the base method. I can also do the same thing on my async part. So override save changes async. And in this case as well, I can do the same part, which is my apply audit info. Now, with this bare minimum change, the one that we have done so far, you are good to go and you are able to insert these records in these tables. Okay. Let's try this by creating a new record into my department table. I'll run my code. I'll wait for my EF code to run this navigation or run this API project. Let me quickly navigate to my database and check whether we have any such column into my department table or not. So in my department table, we already have a 4 columns, that is inventory, supply chain, and so on. We are going to insert a new entry inside it. And let's wait for my API project to be running fine, right? So once my project is up and running, you will notice that I'll navigate back to Swagger. And here are we on the Swagger itself. Let me try to create a new department into my database. And this time I'll give the department name as my new department. Okay. And let me put a breakpoint also into my DB context method. So I'll put a breakpoint inside my audit info. And let me run this code. So once I click on execute, it will navigate to my controller and you will notice that it is hitting my breakpoint. Now inside my breakpoint, I am trying to figure it out, the change tracker entities, and it gave me those entities which are basically changed by my EF code. And then if I'm trying to add a new entity, when I press F10, you can see the state is added and it is going inside this if block, it will skip this modified block and then it will perform a save changes method. And then I run this code, you will notice that I am getting a successful response from my API. And if I verify those changes in my database, so my database consists of a new entry, and that is my new department. And you will notice that in my new department, the created by and the current date is already in place, right? So that is quite simple. You can simply insert a new record, you can create an editing entity, and then you can pass the value in a single place and that it will work. In a similar way, the update call will also work. So I don't think we have any update method in the current application, the current API. But if you also create an update method, then it will work in the same way. It will again go to this logic, and at that time it will fetch the entities, and at that particular moment the entity state will be modified, and this will modify these two columns in my database. So this is how we can make sure that we can apply a auditable entity into my all of my tables in an EF core with a bare minimum code. This is one of the practice that we follow in the production application so that we do not have to repeat ourselves at each and every layer or at each and every method of inserting those records. This is it for this video, guys. I hope you enjoyed that. Please like, share and subscribe my channel so that this will keep me motivated to generate a new content for you. Thank you.